And we are, as a people, inherently and historically
Wake up!
opposed to secret societies, the secret oaths, and the secret proceedings.
The show that asks questions about why we don't ask questions.
What the hell is going on?
This is Conspiracy Queries with Alan Park. Welcome to Conspiracy Queries with Alan Park. These are Conspiracy Queries, and I am Alan Park. You feeling all right? A lot of people find it hot around here. It's 30 degrees or more. That's pushing 92 for our Fahrenheit understanding listeners. And don't hate me, but I like it. I like it. Before it was brought on by global warming or climate change. I don't know what your position is on global warming or climate change. Apparently there is a consensus of scientists that say it's brought on by the activities and emissions of man. And there are scientists that say that that's not true. So they're on different sides of the spectrum. But I haven't got the news for you that that's what this show is about. This show is about sickness. Or is it about health? Actually, it's about how we get from one to the other. And my guest today, his name is Chris Wark, has a lot to say about that. He says that from experience because Chris has been diagnosed with cancer. And Chris will tell us what he did and is doing about that. But first, did I mention it's hot and that there are two kinds of people in this world? And there are the people on one side of the spectrum and people on the other side of the spectrum. There are people that believe the upcoming royal baby is a boy and some that believe it is a girl and some that don't care. Ed Snowden is still making headlines. He was going to be in Venezuela. That's what I thought was going to happen last week. But apparently now he's going to stay in Russia for a while. He's going to spend 3 months in an airport. What a mess. For those that don't like Ed Snowden and what he did, penalty served. 3 months in an airport. How do you practice for that? Anyway, I'll tell you how. You book a flight on Air Canada. Now, some people that think Ed Snowden has done a good thing, and they are nominating him for a Nobel Peace Prize. Good luck with that. They don't really matter anymore. Because when they gave Obama the prize for peace, right before he kicked off all those wars, the Nobel Peace Prize validity went out the window. Yeah. So I don't know if Ed's a good guy or a bad guy. We're not really sure what's happening with him yet. So there are other more immediate things to discuss, and it's bubbling beneath our feet. The oil is. Has there been another oil disaster this week or in the last 24 hours? No? Okay. Well, I guess everything's fine then. The fact that we are heating up like a Trayvon Martin, George Zimmerman race riot and leaking toxic substances into the air and the ground and the water on a daily basis probably doesn't matter. Well, it certainly does matter. If one is in the business of pumping oil, and despite the series of disasters that have befallen us on what seemed like an ever-increasing timetable, there is a plan. Finally, something that can be done about all of this. And the plan is, well, what is the plan? I'll tell you what the plan is. The plan is that we are going to move ahead with Alberta's new plan to commit $5 billion to pipeline to transport the bitumen east. That's the plan. More of the same. From Edmonton, it says Alberta has made a $5 billion commitment to the proposed Energy East pipeline to carry oil sands bitumen to refineries in Quebec and New Brunswick through Toronto on Line 9 pipeline. That's the plan. Yes, Enbridge also is up and running after their spill, after nearly hundreds of thousands of synthetic crude oil liters leaked out. Liters? Is that what we're doing? Well, the reopening, 200,000 liters of synthetic crude, almost 81,000 liters more than what the company previously estimated. So they got the pipeline breach, then they estimated way low, less than half, and now they're up and running again. And this is an article in the FortMcMurrayToday.com. And then you got to stick around for the comments on that one. Listen to this. He says, one of the commenters says, how come so many oil spills in this country are with the equipment of Enbridge? Sounds like BP in the U.S., not addressing equipment deficiencies. He goes on to say that. And his answer comes from Don W102. Don's a bit of a defender of the spill. He says the reason is because they are the biggest. Yeah, that's why it got mentioned. Kind of like when the BP disaster was being talked about, because it was the biggest. And he says, number 2, because they are the ones the media is focused on. Yeah, sure, the damn media focusing on the largest oil spill going on right now. And then this guy says, Kinder Morgan had a spill in BC in June. Did you hear about it? Inferring no. Did you notice how the story was changed from barrels to liters to make it look more alarming? How terrible. It's not to make it look more alarming. It's because more people know about what a liter is than what a barrel is. So this guy's like defending the oil industry, but what else would you expect from FortMcMurrayToday.com? Oh my God. All right. Yes. What else? I've got a lot to squeeze in, a little tiny bit of time here. I'm not even going to cover the news stories, but just tell you that is what's going on. If you have letters and things to send in about how fast I'm going through this and not actually covering the news stories, I don't blame you. We're going to slide right into the Chinese state. We're going to move right from the bubbles to the Chinese. Oh, my goodness. What do we know about the Chinese anyway? Well, I'll tell you one thing is they've got a huge, powerful economy. They've got the #1 bank in the world. They're acquiring gold from almost everything. And also, they might be able to strike us with nuclear missiles soon. There's a new report out that says that China and North Korea will soon be able to strike us with nuclear missiles, but we were already told North Korea had missiles. So, let's get it together. And finally, I should say that it's summertime, barbecue time, and as well as all the meats that go on the grill, people like to grill veggies. It's true, meat eaters, they do. They do like to grill veggies, and sometimes they even like to make a salad out of them. And that's a good thing, right? Well, not if you're looking at some of the veggies that are coming out of Fukushima. They are distorted, twisted freaks of nature that are not appetizing at all. There's some unbelievable photographs of the devastation thanks to the explosion and nuclear leak from 2011. And you may want to not only avoid conventional GMO foods, but the nuclear twisted foods as well. We will spend time in a future broadcast on Fukushima, but now we have to move on to our interview. Stage 3 colon cancer. Stage 3 cancer. According to our old friend Wikipedia, that can be treated by chemo, radiation, and surgery. That's like the only 3 options they give you there. And I'll bet you already know what that is, because what I don't know is one person in my life that has not been touched, or should I say invaded, or claimed by cancer. Not one. Now, either because you know someone or you are that someone, you're probably in the same boat. But before we move forward, I want to tell you that I am not a doctor. And I'm not saying that just to brag. It's a fact. My guest is not a doctor either. Today's show is not meant to be anything that might be considered advice. It is simply for educational purposes, which is kind of funny because a doctor's advice is also for educational purposes. So when a doctor offers educational information, it is often advice. That the educational information here, however, is not advice. Okay, we got that straight? All right, so I'm going to bring on our guest now. It's Chris Wark. Chris, how are you today?
Alan, I'm terrific. Thank you for having me on your show.
Oh, thanks for coming on. Chris has a website called Chris Beats Cancer, and that's CHRIS if you're dialing it up at home and trying to take him in while we have this conversation. Chris, why do you have that website?
Well, so Chris Beats Cancer started a couple of years ago as my way of sharing my story about how I healed myself of stage 3 colon cancer without chemotherapy.
Okay, let's go back to, if you don't mind, you were living your life and you did not have cancer. And how did you find out that you did have cancer?
So when I was 26, young fella, I started having abdominal pain. And, I kind of put it off, typical male. I didn't want to go to the doctor. I was too busy. And I had a belief system that my body would heal it. Whatever the problem was, that my body would heal it because it's always healed in the past. And I believe that the body is designed to heal itself. So anyway, I put it off, and eventually the pain kept getting worse and worse, and finally went to a doctor about it. They thought I had an ulcer. They were wrong. Ulcer medication didn't help. Went back again. They sent me for a colonoscopy. And when they did the colonoscopy, they found a golf ball-sized tumor in my large intestine, in my colon, on the right side, by my appendix. So immediately after that, they basically said, well, look, you've got, they did a biopsy on it, and they came back to me and said, you have colon cancer, and we've got to get you into surgery right away to get this thing out before it spreads, because it can kill you.
So how much time was there between you finding out and then them putting you under the knife?
Oh, well, typically they will rush you right into surgery. I mean, anybody who knows anyone with cancer, they will get you into surgery sometimes the next day, literally, or even that day if they can. I mean, they don't want to give you any time to wait. But in my case, they were trying to get me into surgery the next week, and I asked for a few extra weeks because it was right before Christmas, and I didn't want to be all, late. I wanted to enjoy Christmas with my family and stuff and then have surgery.
Right.
So for me, it ended up being about 2 weeks after I was diagnosed.
But it could have been sooner. This is amazing to me that the doctors are so quick to move on anything, because usually, you're sitting around the waiting room for a week and a half, and then, when it's time to operate, they want to get right on you.
Yeah, with cancer, they want to get you on a conveyor belt as soon as possible. And that's surgery, chemo, radiation. And they want to get you plugged into the system before you really have time to think, to look around, to investigate other options, to look at your life, to make changes. They don't want you to do any of that. They just want you to, get with the program and get on the conveyor belt. So I had surgery. They took the tumor out. They took out a third of my large intestine. They found out that it had spread to some lymph nodes. They took some lymph nodes out. And while I was in the hospital, a couple things happened that were very serendipitous. These were red flags that really started me on, it started my wheels turning. The first thing was the first meal they served me after having a third of my large intestine removed, the first meal I got was a sloppy Joe.
Sloppy Joe.
In Canada?
Oh, yeah, we know what that's like a whole bunch of chemicals, and you mix it in with hamburger meat and pour it over a bun.
Yeah, it's a big sloppy meat situation.
That's the first thing you had in the hospital?
Yes, that was the hospital food brought to me after, intestinal surgery. So they bring me this sloppy Joe, and I'm laying there, and I'm all doped up, but I'm still thinking, this? Like, really?
Please tell me the doctor that prescribed you this also had brain surgery following that decision.
Yeah. So,
unbelievable.
And by the way, I'm sure he had no idea what they were feeding me. There's such a disconnect there in hospitals. The doctors don't even care what they're feeding you.
Yeah, good point.
But I was still surprised. I thought, this is a place of healing, and everybody's sick, and don't we need some kind of healthier food? And I didn't know anything about health food, really. I mean, very little. But I knew a sloppy Joe was like the bottom of the barrel mystery meat cafeteria food. And so that was red flag number one. Red flag number two was the day I was checking out of the hospital, the surgeon came in for one last visit to check on me or whatever, and he was making his rounds. And I was, sort of had some questions for him, and I asked him, is there any food I need to eat or maybe to avoid, because I wasn't sure. And he said, no, just don't lift anything heavier than a beer.
Unbelievable.
Yeah. So that was the nutritional advice I got from my surgeon.
Okay.
So, right. So after that, I'm just starting to think, I don't understand. I don't get this. Like, why don't they care about nutrition? It seems like it's important, right? So I went home, and it was healing up, and trying to get off the pain medication and stuff after a week or so. And I didn't even finish the pain meds because I just didn't like being doped up. I wanted to get well, and I felt like they might have been interfering with my body's ability to heal too. So anyway, as I was thinking about all this, I got to back up. They told me in the hospital that the next step would be 9 to 12 months of chemotherapy.
What would that involve exactly?
Well, multiple rounds, many rounds. I don't even know how many.
Okay, well, did they explain that to you? Like, I've not had it, and I know people that have had it, but it varies from case to case and from what kind of cancer, et cetera. So would you be going in there for like an hour or several hours at a time, and how many times a week, that kind of thing?
Well, that varies, and I'll get to that in a minute.
Okay.
So when it'll make more sense when I get there.
Of course it will. Okay.
Yeah. So all I knew at that point was 9 to 12 months of chemotherapy, and that it was going to be a lot of treatment. Usually several per week, and then maybe a week off. And again, it depends on the cancer and stuff like that. But I didn't have a good feeling about chemotherapy. I never had any. I was only 26. Okay, so I'd never had any friends or family members diagnosed with cancer. So I didn't have any personal connection to it. I only knew of it sort of from a third-party perspective. You know what I mean?
Right. Okay, I do.
But at the same time, I knew chemotherapy was poisonous. I knew from the people I'd seen out in the world that, they looked like they were dying. They looked like zombies.
Yeah.
No hair, just dying. And, sometimes, they've got like the thing covering their mouth because, they're just susceptible to any germ out there.
And the very sunken eyes. And
Yeah, just terrible. And so the idea of poisoning my way back to health did not make sense. It didn't click with me. So I had a problem. I had an internal problem. I couldn't make sense of it. And so my wife and I prayed, and we're praying people anyway, but we specifically prayed, in early January, God, if there's another way besides chemotherapy, to show me. And 2 days later, I got a book. It was mailed to me from a man in Alaska. So he mailed this book from Alaska to me in Memphis, Tennessee. And this man named Alstron knew my dad.
What's his name?
I've never met his name is Alstron.
Okay.
You probably don't know him. But he knew my dad, and I've never met him. Just a business colleague of my dad and a friend. And so he sent me this book called God's Way to Ultimate Health. So I pray and ask for some other way, and then I get a book called God's Way to Ultimate Health. So I'm like, okay, maybe I should read this. And I start reading the book, and it was an amazing answer to prayer because that book was written by another man named George Malkmus. And George Malkmus was diagnosed with colon cancer 30-plus years ago.
I have to stop you here. I have to stop you here and just get you to spell those names because we're getting you pretty loud and clear, but I'm losing those names.
Yeah. Well, so Alstron is Straun. No, you can look him up. You won't find anything. He's not a public figure.
But the other guy, George.
But George Malkmus is George, George, Malkmus, as in Sam. George
Okay.
Malkmus.
And I want to make it clear to the listeners, too, that when Chris prayed to God to get some help regarding his cancer. The book came very soon after that, not directly from God, but from a branch office in Alaska. Okay, carry on.
That's right. So that book was written by George Malcolmus, and he had refused surgery and chemotherapy for colon cancer and radically changed his diet and lifestyle, and his body healed. And as I'm reading this story in his book, I'm like, this is it. This makes complete sense. And for the first time, I understood why I was sick. I understood that I was sick and I had cancer because I had been polluting my body with processed food, with food that was not created for us to eat. Food that was full of artificial flavors, colors, texture enhancers, sweeteners, too much processed meat and fat and sugar and salt and all this man-made junk.
I'm right on board with you with all of that, but I have to ask, I know lots of people that also consume that stuff, and they don't have stage 3 cancer now, never mind, back in their 20s. So do we have different kinds of body types where some of us are more able to sustain the onslaught of processed corporate garbage and some of us are more sensitive to it? Is that what you've come to find out?
Well, it's sort of like that. We are all of us are different. We all have a very similar functioning body, but we all have different experiences in life. And we all encounter various levels of toxins in the world going through our lives. And we all have different levels of stress and negative emotions. And so the 3 big factors that will break your body's ability to heal down to a point where cancer can take over are your diet, your lifestyle, and stress. Okay? So for me, all 3 of those were major factors. My diet, I was poisoning and polluting my body. And the human body has an amazing ability to detoxify, to repair and regenerate. But if you keep putting bad stuff in, if you keep polluting your body with junk food, over time, there will be a tipping point in your health. And for some people, that tipping point might be high cholesterol. It might be heart disease. It might be diabetes. It might be fibromyalgia. It might be headaches or whatever. But when you start to get these chronic problems, illnesses, diseases, etc., that is the tipping point in your health, when what you've been doing to your body finally catches up with you. For me, it happened to be a tumor, a cancerous tumor in my colon. And by the way, cancer is very natural. Cancer is normal. It's not something to be afraid of. The fear about cancer comes from the cancer treatment industry. Someone living in the middle of the wilderness, let's just say an aborigine, if that aborigine that doesn't know anything about chemotherapy or the cancer treatment industry and is completely disconnected from the modern world, if a person like that gets a tumor, an obvious tumor on their body, what are they going to do? They're probably going to try to treat it with some herbs or whatever, but for the most part, they may just go on with their life, They just get on with their life, they keep living, and they don't worry about it. And by the way, the body is able to heal those tumors even if you don't change your life at all. But that's not the best approach. The best approach is to radically change your diet and lifestyle and overdose on nutrition and put all this amazing food from the earth that was created for us into your body. That's fruits and vegetables, seeds, nuts. Like, all this stuff is so good for you, and we are starving, literally starving for it. I realized that I was malnourished. I was overfed, but I was malnourished. Does that make sense?
Yeah, absolutely. Were you overweight as well at that time?
No, I was not overweight. I've always been thin, high metabolism, very thin guy, low body fat, and I could eat anything I wanted anytime, and I thought I had a free pass. So, I ate fast food all the time. I ate fast food every day for lunch. My breakfast was usually cereal or whatever. Dinner was either more fast food or junk food or, some kind of microwave food, something quick I could eat on the go. And, being in my early 20s, I was self-employed in the real estate business, and I was building a business, was working nonstop, just burning the candle at both ends under lots of stress. And I also had a lot of negative emotions in my life that I hadn't dealt with, like unforgiveness and envy and jealousy. And I realized as I started to heal and started to evaluate every area of my life that my emotional life was a mess, that I was just harboring all this negativity and unhealthy emotions. And when you do that, you create stress in your body. And when you have stress in your body, chronic stress, whether it comes from your emotions or from your bad relationships or from your work or from, any source of stress in your life, raises your stress hormones. And your stress hormones are cortisol and adrenaline. Those are the two big ones. And when those hormones are elevated, your immune system is suppressed. So the longer you go under stress, the longer your immune system is suppressed, the more at risk you are.
That's also increasing those 3 points that you mentioned, and you've been spending time on stress here, but you mentioned some points earlier. They all contribute towards acidity as well. That's also a problem.
Yes, absolutely. And inflammation. When those hormones are up, they're pro-inflammatory, and pro-inflammatory is also acidic in your body. So you've got acidity, inflammation, and a suppressed immune system. So like I said before, cancer is natural and it's normal, and the body is designed to recognize cells when they mutate and become cancerous. We all have cancer cells in our body. Every single person listening to this program has cancer cells in their body. And when your immune system is functioning properly, your body identifies cancer cells and it eliminates them. But if you don't take care of yourself and you pollute your body and overload it with toxins, over time, there can be a tipping point, and there often is.
What's the number one killer? Heart disease?
Heart disease.
Yeah.
They both kill about 500,000 people a year.
Now, you were, take me back a little bit further on your story timeline. So you and your wife find out that you've got this cancer and you're dealing with that, and then you get this book and you start to change your diet. So that's one thing that you did. And you also took in some exercises by way of rebounding, and I want you to talk about that, the various other different aspects. But I also want to talk about you and your wife were at the center of this storm. Tell me what kind of reactions you were getting from, I don't know, other family members, friends, people you worked with, whoever, just other people in your life, that when they found out you were going through recipe books and changing your diet and not going through this prescribed 9 to 12 months of chemotherapy, that you were making a huge mistake. Did you run into that kind of resistance?
Yeah, so what we'll do is I'll try to lay it out systematically.
Okay.
And I can rabbit trail pretty hard, as you've noticed. But so first I'll explain the reaction, and then I'll talk about specifically what I ate, the foods that I was eating, because those are so important. I want to make sure we get them in.
We will get them in.
The broadcast.
And then I will be hungry.
So when I read that book, I was so excited. I called my wife. I was like, I know what I'm going to do. I've got it. And I started telling her about changing my diet and about juicing and eating raw fruits and vegetables. And she was not happy. Okay. My wife and I have been married for 2 years. We dated for 6 years before that. I mean, we've known each other a long time. And she didn't like that idea at all. And my mom has always been kind of a health junkie, and she understood it, and she was on board. She thought I was doing the right thing and supported me. But the rest of my family members thought I was nuts. And what happens to people is if you are diagnosed with cancer and you instinctively don't want to do chemotherapy because your instincts are telling you this is poison, this is going to kill you, this is going to hurt you, it's not going to help. Most cancer patients have those instincts, but there's so much pressure from friends and family members, loved ones, and the doctors to all do the prescribed treatment. They all want you to get on the conveyor belt, like I said. And no, you have to do the chemotherapy. You have to do the surgery. No, you have to do the radiation. You know, if there was something else out there that was better, they'd be using it. These are the best available treatments that we know of, right? That's the kind of stuff you're going to hear, and that I heard. And so I reluctantly agreed to go meet with the oncologist that they had recommended that I work with. So this was basically just to appease family members. So I was like, okay, I'll just, just go hear what he has to say. Maybe they have some alternative therapies. So I'm like, okay, whatever. So we go to the oncologist clinic. I'm sitting in the waiting room with my wife, and it was, bright and early, first thing in the morning. And one of the morning shows was on, and we're watching the morning show. It was like the Today Show or one of those shows. And out comes Jack LaLanne. You know who that is?
Yeah, he's like a 114-year-old juice man who used to celebrate his birthday by towing boats, swimming in the water. But he's an old exercise guy.
Health and fitness guru, has been promoting health and nutrition and juicing for like 60 years. And he comes out there, he's in his 80s, and he's fit as a fiddle, and he is just going off about this is why we're sick, because we're poisoning our bodies, we're eating all this processed food, we're not eating fruits and vegetables, we're not juicing. This is the way to health. And I just didn't believe it. I was like, he's speaking to me on television right now. Like I'm totally jiving with this guy right now. And he was reinforcing everything that had just clicked for me. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
And I was like, I can't believe this is on right now in the cancer clinic. Like we're just sitting here about to go back to see the doctor. And my wife was like, yeah, that is pretty weird. So, but she still wasn't ready to jump on board with me. So we go back and see the oncologist, and he says, look, you got about a 60% chance of living 5 years with what you've got if you do, the standard treatment. And I asked him if there are any alternative therapies available. He said, no, there are none. If you don't do chemotherapy, you're insane. Put me dead in the eye, scared the you-know-what out of me.
He actually told you he actually told you you'd be insane not to do that.
That's what he said, verbatim. If you don't do chemotherapy, you're insane. That's what he said.
Wow.
And I asked him about the raw diet because I was already on it. I'd been on it for about a week. And he said, no, you can't do the raw diet. It'll fight the chemo.
It'll fight the chemo.
Yeah.
Well, because the chemo is supposed to kill everything in your body, and you're giving it nutritional properties that are boosting it. So, yeah, it's going to kill
That's right. Yeah. They're afraid it'll help the cancer. But the reality is, here's why they don't want you to do the raw diet. A raw vegan diet, which is what I adopted in the beginning, is a very aggressive healing and detoxification diet because you're pumping in so many vitamins and minerals and nutrients and enzymes and all this good stuff that your body is just craving and hasn't had in large doses in probably ever, that your body starts to heal and it starts to detoxify. And it's very nutrient dense, but it's low calorie, so you also will lose weight too. And so as you start to detoxify rapidly, well, if they give you chemotherapy and you're on a raw vegan diet, your body's just going to kick the chemo out. I mean, it'll just kick it out. It won't hang around and linger and do all this destruction that they want it to do. And then the second reason is when the chemotherapy destroys your immune system. And so when your immune system is destroyed or decimated or hindered or whatever, you become very susceptible to infections from otherwise harmless bacteria. You know, like the bacteria that's on an apple is all of a sudden a threat when chemotherapy destroys your immune system. So that's why they don't want you to do the raw diet. So we left the clinic, and I was terrified. I was doubting everything that I had thought I was going to do. But at the same time, I did pick up on those things he said, and they really stuck with me, And, how they didn't care about nutrition at all, and were just really trying to use fear to motivate me to take action, because that's what they do. They use fear of death, to convince you to say yes to being poisoned and cut on and radiated, right?
Yeah.
They put you in a corner where you think you have no option. It's either die or let us give you these brutal treatments that can also kill you and make you worse.
I'm speaking with Chris Wark. He had cancer. He doesn't have it anymore, so he's well worth listening to. He's got the website Chris Beat Cancer.
So at this point, I should say, because I haven't said it yet, I don't think, I was 26 when I was diagnosed. Today, I'm 36.
Wow.
It's been 10 years. My 10-year anniversary is in December, okay? So, so back to my story, I adopted a raw vegan diet. So here's what I did. I drank 8 glasses of vegetable juice every day. I got up first thing in the morning and ran the juicer. I got a Champion juicer, which is like a commercial kind of juicer. I made a huge batch of juice to last me throughout the day. Usually it was carrot juice with some beets in there and celery, some fresh ginger root. That was a pretty popular juice blend for me. Carrot juice, 1 glass of carrot juice has like 40 or 50,000 international units of vitamin A, which is an amazing liver detoxifier. 1 glass of carrot juice has more vitamin A than anything else on earth. I mean, it is the highest source of vitamin A. They've studied this extensively. Not to mention beta-carotene and all these other vitamins, minerals, enzymes, and all that stuff. For lunch, I had a giant salad with all of the most powerful anti-cancer vegetables. You know, they've studied this extensively, and there have been hundreds of peer-reviewed scientific papers published in medical journals about the anti-cancer nutrients in food. But the problem is that's where it stops. A researcher will do the research, they'll publish it, and it stops right there. The pharmaceutical companies won't do anything with it because they can't make any money on a natural compound. They just can't do it. Did you know that the average, this is going to blow your mind, you may already know it, the average cost to get a prescription drug approved is $1.3 billion.
Yeah.
$1.3 billion. That's for each drug that was approved.
Well, you better sell a lot of them once they're approved, I guess.
Yeah. Well, think so. It costs, so right there, it costs each drug that has actually gotten approval, the average research and development cost is $1.3 billion. So there's no way a company would invest $1.3 billion studying or trying to get approval on green tea extract or turmeric or any of these other natural compounds like ellagic acid in blackberries or allicin in garlic. Anyway, there's no way they would ever make their money back. It's impossible, okay? Because somebody like you and I could make the same product. You could turn around and make garlic extract and sell it out of the back of your car. So anyway, so the pharmaceutical industry ignores all of this research because it cannot be, a natural substance cannot be patented. The only way they can patent it is if they can alter it on a molecular level and change it in some way. But anytime you do that, usually it creates a toxic byproduct. That's why prescription drugs, most of them come from nature, started as a natural compound, or altered in a lab. So when you put them in their body, they do have some benefit, but they also have side effects. So anyway, here's where it gets really crazy. They did another study, Tufts did a study in 2011 where they looked, I already mentioned the Tufts study, about $1.3 billion for each prescription drug. There was another study done by Forbes where they took like the 15 biggest pharmaceutical companies, and they took all the money they spent on research and development, and then they divided that by the number of drugs that they actually got approved. And what they found was the average cost, if you average out all their research costs, including all the drugs that didn't get approved, the average cost for each drug that was approved was $5.8 billion. $5.8 billion per
That's
drug.
Unbelievable. That's a large number.
It's mind-blowing. And you realize that these drugs, we think, well, how can they even spend that much money? Because these drugs, once approved, they'll make 20, 50, 100, 500 billion. Right? So they're willing to spend $5 billion to get a drug approved.
Are you aware of are you aware of the cost of each individual chemotherapy treatment were you to go that way?
Well, the average cancer patient is worth, on average, over $300,000 to the medical industry. So that includes chemo treatment, surgery, radiation, blood work, CAT scans, all that kind of stuff. Between $300,000 and $500,000, that's about the average. Some are way more than that. You know, some of these chemo drugs, like Avastin costs $100,000 a year for a prescription for Avastin. So, and there's a lot of chemotherapy drugs, especially the newer drugs. A lot of them are coming out with this $100,000 or more price tag per year.
Yeah, but think of all the money though that you're saving on quality food.
Right.
If you take the chemo, because you can't eat the quality food, or it'll fight the chemo.
Conventional cancer treatments, they will destroy your health and they will destroy your wealth because they are so expensive, they will bankrupt you. Even if you have insurance. Insurance will not cover everything. And those co-pays and those percentages that you have to pay just get astronomical. You know, the average person doesn't have an extra $2,000 or $5,000 or $10,000 a month for cancer treatment.
No, absolutely.
There's no
not.
way. So they're mortgaging their house, they're borrowing from friends and family members. I mean, they're begging for money because they think that this is their only hope.
Chris, I could talk to you all day, but we've only got about 8 or 10 minutes left. I can't even believe it at this point. Let's go back to...
Once I start going, it's hard for me to stop.
Yeah, no, I understand. Absolutely. Let me hear a little bit about the people that were against you going this route when you had the book and you came across the nutritional information and you started doing it. You started doing that right around the same time you were meant to be taking the chemo. Is that right?
Yeah.
Okay,
that's
so
right.
then...
I'll just say this, for anybody that's listening, the first question you asked me was about my website, chrisspeedcancer.com, and on that site is so much exciting information about nutrition and natural therapies for cancer. And it's not just for cancer patients, it's for people that want to live in promote health in their body and not get cancer. I mean, it's a way to live. And by the way, it doesn't mean you have to be a raw vegan. So anyway, we're touching on a lot of topics that I can't get extremely detailed about, but there's tons of information on my site. So in the beginning, right, I had very little support. My mom supported me, and that was about it. But I found a local nutritionist who was a clinical nutritionist that specialized in natural therapies, and found him in Memphis. And I went and saw him, and I told him what I was doing. I said, look, I'm on this raw vegan diet. I've read this book called God's Way to Ultimate Health, and I'm reading some more books now. And, I was on an information quest. I was just devouring as much information as I could. I was wanting to find other survivors. Has anybody else done this? Has anybody else said no to chemotherapy and used herbs or food? Or, where are these people? Can I find them? And he said, look, you're doing the right thing. You're doing exactly what you need to be doing. And he was the first person to tell me that. And I can't tell you how huge that was for me. That was a powerful moment when I realized that someone told me I was doing it right.
Yeah, from the outside, right?
Yeah, because no one else, again, my mom supported me, but there was no one else. I was alone, I was swimming upstream, right?
Yeah.
And with no help. And that is very scary. And that's why so many cancer patients, they know they shouldn't be doing chemotherapy. They know in their heart it's poisoning them. It's killing them. They can feel it, but they don't know what to do. And it's overwhelming to think about, what if I say no? Everyone's going to tell me I'm crazy. I don't want to die and be a fool. I don't want to be that fool that tried alternative therapies like Steve Jobs, which, by the way, no one knows what he did. No one knows what he did.
What did he?
He did quote-unquote alternative therapies. Nobody knows. Nobody knows. And the reality is, whatever he did is probably why he lived as long as he did with his cancer. The fact that he delayed the aggressive treatments for so long is probably why he lived as long as he did. And his health really did not even dive bomb nosedive until he did the Whipple procedure, which is a very controversial, dangerous, risky surgery. When he agreed to that, right after that is really when his health started to fail.
Yeah.
But anyway, so no one really supported me in the beginning, but I found this nutritionist who did, and he worked with me, and he looked at my blood work and my urine and my hair and my stool and my body type. And, he had me on a lot of different supplements on top of the diet. And after 90 days on the raw vegan diet, he modified it and added clean organic meat back into my diet and some cooked food like cooked vegetables and brown rice and quinoa and stuff like that, sweet potatoes.
And we can find a lot of this information on your website, Chris Beat Cancer, yes?
Oh, yeah.
Okay. Now, I wanted to touch on a couple of other things, too, because we do have to leave soon. Will you come back another time and we can focus more on a specific facet?
I'd rather not.
Okay, good. Of course. All right. You got into rebounding. What is that?
Yeah, so rebounding is a really incredible exercise for your immune system, and that involves jumping on a little mini trampoline. If you have a big trampoline, that's great too. But when you jump up and down, that moves your lymphatic system. And that's a way that someone can move their lymphatic system, which is your detoxification system. You have 3 times more lymphatic fluid in your body than you do blood. But your blood has a pump called your heart. Your lymphatic system does not have a pump, and it is encouraged to move throughout your body by muscle contraction. So every time you move a muscle, your arms, your legs, your torso, all those little contractions are massaging your lymph system and moving lymph fluid throughout your body to your kidneys, to your, to eventually basically taking the waste away from your cells to be eliminated, right? That's your elimination pathway.
So that makes sense then. When you get so much of the lymph nodes in trouble when there's cancer, it's basically the conduit for the sludge that your body's trying to remove, and it's not moving; it's just sitting there.
That's right. That's right. And rebounding is just an incredible way to move it. Any exercise moves it. Any movement moves it. When you rebound, you get gravitational G-force working against your body. Every muscle in your body contracts in some of a bound, and it's the top of a bound. And so it's just an incredible way to move your lymphatic system without doing it's very low impact, and it doesn't exhaust you and raise your, it doesn't create like stress in your body like running or a really extreme cardiovascular exercise would. So it's a very light, easy exercise that's very effective at detoxing.
Right. And you also meditated. Tell us about that.
A lot of prayer. A lot of prayer and meditation, just spending time with God, praying, asking for direction and encouragement. And, I was so desperate for direction, at that time. And fear is a big problem with cancer. Fear creates stress. Remember, stress causes cancer. Well, guess what? After you have cancer, your stress level goes through the roof.
Yeah.
And so every time I would think about or be reminded that I had cancer, I just have to pray. Just say, God, I can't handle this. I'm just going to give you my fear. I trust you with my life. I trust you to lead me in the path of healing. I trust you with my family. I'm trusting you completely, right? I need help. I need you. So that was a big part of it. And just meditating. There's a lot of verses in the Bible about healing. That it's God's will to heal. That He's not His will for you to be sick, but if He, quote, allows you to be sick, usually you're sick because of external factors or the choices you've made. But even if God allows you to be sick, it is still His will to restore you. And that's very powerful and very encouraging. And the Bible's full of that stuff, full of the verses about that. And in fact, that's all Jesus did, was heal the sick, right? He taught about the kingdom of God, and He healed the sick. That's all He did. It was his entire ministry. It was basically 2 things. So that was a huge source of encouragement for me.
Well, Chris Wark, I'm glad you're still here. I have 2 quick. We're out of time, but I'm going over time because this is fascinating. I have 2 quick questions for you. If you can answer them in Say 90 seconds or less.
I will try.
See what you can do. Number one, if you could go back, and this is not medical advice for anybody listening. Thank you.
That's right.
Send your letters somewhere else. If you could go back to the day they said, Chris, we have to cut you open and take that stuff out of there, would you have done that? Or would you have started right in with the book? Because a lot of people might say, well, of course he was able to get over his cancer because he did go the traditional route of having the surgery and having the chunk of his colon removed.
Yeah, that's a great question. Well, what you have to understand is surgery can give you a jump start at healing. Sometimes it can make cancer worse because of the body's reaction to surgery because it's so traumatic that the healing response after surgery, all those growth hormones, are actually cancer fuel. And they know that surgery doesn't cure cancer, or else that's all they would do is give cancer patients surgery. But cancer is a systemic metabolic disease. It involves your whole body. Just because you have one lump or one bump or a tumor, that is not the main problem. That's only a symptom. You have cancer in your whole body. It just happens to be congregating in that one spot for the time being. But if you cut that tumor off, your body's going to build a new one.
So you would have opted for surgery?
Would I have done the surgery? I don't know. I mean, I probably, knowing what I know now, I probably would have tried to heal it naturally first. If I wasn't making any progress, and maybe have surgery. You know, but at the time, I'm glad I had surgery because I didn't know what to do. You know, I mean, God was with me. He was leading me, and you know, even though they rushed me in, the surgery was just one step in my journey. But I know tons of cancer survivors that have healed without surgery. So the body created it. The body can heal it.
And how often do you go back to the medical establishment to make sure that you don't have cancer still? I mean, it's been 10 years now since you've been...
Yeah. I had several CAT scans along the way and blood work, you know, annually. I had a colonoscopy earlier this year. So, yeah, you know, I do periodic checkups just to make sure I'm good.
Well, I'm glad that you are, and thank you for coming on the show. We will definitely have you back. Where I want to specifically zoom in on several of the different facets that you talk about. I mean, it sounds like each aspect of this you could go on for hours.
Oh man, I can talk. Yes, I can talk for hours and hours. I've got such a passion for nutrition and health and healing. It's become a huge part of my life.
And isn't it great now to just
a lot of info?
Isn't it great now to just look at your wife and say, "I told you so"?
Yeah, it's pretty great. And by the way, just to sum up that question, a lot of family members are now big believers in what I did and have changed their diet, and friends too. And so it's really neat. In the beginning, if you do what I did, everybody thinks you're crazy, but just give it a little time, because when you get better, they'll come around.
Well, that's a great net benefit that you were also able to help your family and others. Again, This is not medical advice, but I invite everyone listening, and we will definitely link this up on the Conspiracy Queries page that you can go to Chris's website, chrisbeatcancer.com. And Chris did beat cancer, and he's got lots of great information for educational purposes that you may want to look at. I wanted to ask you as well earlier, but kind of ran out of time. When a doctor tells you, no, there's no other choice, and then you're also now aware of these peer-reviewed reports on nutrition and food that say that is a way to go, there's the whole avenue of potential lawsuits and fraud, but we don't have time to open that can of worms right now. Maybe we can talk about that later.
Sure.
Chris, thanks for coming on the show. Stay healthy. Give my best to your family and your wife, and good for you. It's nice to hear your story. Thanks for coming on.
Thank you, Alan. It was a pleasure.
Thanks for listening to Conspiracy Queries with Alan Park. Please offer comments or complaints by emailing conspiracyqueries@gmail.com or on Twitter @con_queries or at our website, conspiracyqueries.com. Thanks for listening.